Hello. Oh, live.
Nice to know I'm so easily replaceable. Off you go, little lady. Gorgeous. Welcome to Black Weekend. It's a mental way to start a live stream. The culture of like the Black Weekend here is kind of pretty nuts, Paul, isn't it? Because 5 years ago we decided to do it, but kind of grudgingly. Not grudgingly is not the word, but just
We couldn't understand. So many Americans were saying, "Why are you doing Black Friday?" We didn't really know what Black Friday was. And actually, the same year that we started doing a Black Friday weekend, the kind of Macy's of the UK, John Lewis did it as well, and they had a sign up above the checkouts which said, Black Friday, we're doing it because everybody else is. So,
really grudgingly. You know?
Grudgingly. But it's kind of taken off now, hasn't it? Here?
Absolutely. And when we pressed go 5 years ago, it was like, and like it was all hands on deck. So that kind of spirit has continued, and it's the time of year when it's kind of like a fiesta atmosphere here, where everyone's jumping on live chat. So if you want to join us on live chat, you may catch Paul, you may catch Sandy. Actually, probably quite a high likelihood of catching Sandy because he's fast on the draw.
He's very fast, yeah.
And Homai, and worse luck if you get me. But you know, it's not just about kind of buying kit and all of that kind of stuff. There's all sorts of amazing live streams. We've thrown the doors open to share this kind of fiesta environment with you. But there are some deals to be had.
There are some deals to be had. So we've got 25% off our individual libraries. And if you take a look at our collections, you can get up to 73% off with our collections. And especially I draw your attention to the Ton, which has got British Drama Toolkit, EDNA Earth, Orchestral Grand Piano, and that's 100, whatever the currency is. Actually, I should say, actually, no, not yet. Okay, so £100, dollars or euros. If you have some of the stuff in the collection and you're logged in, the cart will kind of give you a quote for what it would be to complete your collection. So that's an important thing to note. And we've also got a kind of fun thing which we made called Aperture Strings, which we wanted to make as a kind of fun giveaway. And so it was kind of based on an idea that you've been using a few years back. I think you talked about it in your YouTube video.
Yeah, just kind of automating between libraries, between chamber and symphonics.
Yeah, to get a kind of swelling or a kind of scale that isn't really just related to dynamic, and it's just not related to just volume, but it's more of aperture, I guess.
Yeah.
That's the only way to describe it. But as with everything that we do, once we started, we got slightly involved, and so we ended up going into the hall and recording what we call a pinhole camera layer, which is like a tiny string section.
But playing really tiny, it's great.
Playing really quiet. Yeah. And so that's in there on its own as well. It's just a fun thing. You swell through from that tiny thing through 4 layers, and it's just a different way of playing strings.
Absolutely, and it's free, provided you...
Yeah, it's free, and if you check out on the website, there's details of how you can get hold of that. It's all on there. Check Aperture Strings. So, over the course of the weekend...
Yes, lots of live streamy stuff. So most of them starting in the afternoons here. But after we start waffling on, we've got Martin Phipps, who is my, no offence, Paul, favourite composer in the country. Quite an extraordinary, really surprising interview that we did a couple of weeks back. So that's going to come very soon after this waffle. And then tomorrow, I believe at 1700 hours GMT, what Black Weekend would be complete without the tombola? Now, there's been a lot of people complaining about our drum leaks tickets because it's an old creaky thing. So I've actually witnessed the team here have spent more time sealing this tombola than they have setting up these lights. It's been a real kind of...
Tombola is rock solid.
Yeah, 1700 hours GMT on the Spitfire site. And then something I'm really excited about is it's a new concept called The Surgery. Now, it's going to be slightly earlier, 1400 hours GMT on Saturday, the 30th of November. Now, the idea behind this is going to be 3 esteemed composers and me, and it's not an AMA, it's not asking us about how we entered into the industry, it's not asking us about what are our favourite sounds, it's actually about your issues, your concerns, your if there are any problems you're having, whether that be with an EQ or a compressor or indeed a dodgy director. So if you want to take part in that, doesn't matter if you can't join us for the live stream, we will be recording it. But if you want to take part in that and put some questions forward, please use the handle hashtag the Spitfire Surgery. Sorry, I'll say that again. Hashtag the Spitfire Surgery 2019. And then on Sunday, it's always lovely to get the family involved on the Sunday. I'm really delighted to be again joined by my brother Joe Henson and Alexis. Now they have ripped a new one where computer games music is concerned. We'll be talking about Assassin's Creed Odyssey that they worked on, Horizon Zero Dawn, and something I worked with them also on Alien Isolation. But the key kind of tranche of questioning I'm going to direct at them is how to break into computer games music and what are the differences between that, TV and film. So if you want to take part in that, again, you don't have to be there for the live stream, but if you want to ask them questions, use the handle hashtag the flight at Spitfire Audio. Finally, penultimately on Monday, lots going on. Again, 1700 hours GMT on Monday the 2nd of December. We're bringing back Creative Cribs. You don't even know who it is, do you?
No.
It's a surprise for everyone, and it's the one you've been waiting for. And finally on Tuesday, we're going to wrap up at... saw that face. Finally, we're going to wrap up Tuesday 3rd, 1700 hours GMT with a kind of wrap up of
the year. So it's important to remember that, we've got... it's not just about if you're going to come and if you want to get a deal or spend some money in the shop. It's really... it's just a whole weekend packed full of fun stuff. So keep your eye on our socials, and if you can't be there at the specific time that we're doing anything, all of this stuff is going to be recorded and uploaded, so you'll be able to catch up on it later. But there's tons of great stuff to watch.
Is that everything, gang?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so over to Martin Phipps. Roll VT. Are you a Tottenham supporter?
No, it's an ironic mug. It says...
Oh, you're a Gooner then?
Yes.
I had a season ticket for a year, and I think what I loved about it is that it really, I don't have a clue what they're doing and how they're doing it. And it was a great divorce from work. I don't know if you find it a good release in that respect.
Exactly that. I almost prefer it. I sit with quite a few friends, but I almost prefer it when most of them don't turn up or I'm on my own.
Yes.
And I can just sit there, and it's another absorption. But I'm part of something. So it's not like this, which is being absorbed by something where I'm just on my own.
Yeah.
It's actually being in a crowd of 60,000 and experiencing something with them, but I still actually don't have to engage with anything.
Yeah, no, I totally. I missed that. I'm going to start taking my kids up in Edinburgh. I think it'll be Hearts that we'll be going to. But
Right.
is that an important thing? So how long have you been here?
6 years.
Okay, right.
Yeah.
So when thinking of your workspace, have you ever worked from home?
Yeah, I've done the work. I've done the,
You've done all
I've
the
done the
whole
work
mixture.
home till my kids were 2 years old, and
Okay.
and then it was that's not possible, is it really? If you can help it,
No.
I think it drives you insane. I needed that separation of work and
Absolutely,
home life.
because
Otherwise, it's nothing.
they need you in a different way up till 2, and then they just want it's you they want. It's not I need you to
Yes, it's not a
facilitate the
practical
bath.
thing.
It's
Yes,
just,
yes.
I need,
Yes.
and I cannot understand why you don't want to be.
Yeah,
with
and
me playing.
if you're not there, they're just wandering around your studio, poking their fingers into your speakers.
Is the separation important from you for a kind of psychological point of view? Can you ever really divorce yourself from what you're?
Yeah. I think the separation is really important for any composer. If you don't separate yourself from your work, then that's all you are, and you're I think you're heading for trouble.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I see quite a lot of the guys out in America who they don't seem to really have much separation, and especially living in a city like LA, which is fairly monoculture if you're in that world. I think I don't feel like most of the people out there have much of another life. I may be wrong, but it feels a little like that. And so for me, really important to have more time, more separation.
Yes.
I still work long hours.
So what's your day tend to?
My day is a very, very sort of sedate 9:30, 10 start. I'm in here up and running by about 10.
Okay.
I work till about 3. Then I have to go and run around or do something or swim or just be out. I can't really function after 3 o'clock. I hit a brick wall, I go out, get cold, I get hot, I do something, I come back into the studio, and then I'll work. That's probably the best zone then.
Oh, really?
Cup of coffee, some sugar, and I'm back.
Best zone for both composing and doing?
Yeah,
or?
just all round, I can be really in the zone then, and that takes me till about 8, and then I'll be home. But I only live around the corner, so it's literally, I just toddle back and forth,
Right.
And that's great. I mean, I'm very lucky to have that kind of setup.
And weekends?
Weekends, I will, at the moment, and it's almost like I'm doing a full-time job at the moment, because I'm doing, as in a normal job, because I'm doing The Crown and I'm not doing anything else, and I'm taking a whole year to do each season.
Wow.
So I'm not doing anything else. But I'm still only really managing to not work more than 6 days a week. So I take one full day off a week.
Good for you.
And that's better than most times in my life, for sure.
Right. And has this been a change that you've kind of determined, or?
It's been a choice, for sure, and it's sort of come my way, and I've embraced it.
Right.
Definitely. I like that. With what I'm doing at the moment, I could do something else in theory, and if something came along that I was so desperate to do, then I would probably try and make space to do it. But it hasn't happened yet. It didn't happen during last year. I'm very methodical and slow and ponderous in my
I would
work.
never hear ponderousness in your
Wait till
music,
I
but
play you
whenever
this cue.
when I listen to your scores, Martin, it's just, you always give something that's new and fresh. It
so
doesn't.
nice to
It
hear.
never sounds like you're treading water or regurgitating anything. It's always incredibly surprising, and it does to me sound like someone who is spending time on something.
Right. Well, you're exactly right. And I do have that sense of like, could this just? Look, and I've done loads of normal TV in my life, very multi-episodic kind of. This is not. It's meant as much an insult to myself as anybody else. But if I ever feel like it feels like a normal TV queue, I'm like, could this be? Could I transplant this to X number of shows? This queue, and if I can, I'm thinking, then it's not quite. I need to think again.
I've watched stuff that you've done. I remember being on a jury at the Ivors. It's okay, you won that year. And it was, I remember there's something, was it the Virgin Queen or?
Right, that was a while back, yeah, Virgin Queen.
Vocal stuff.
Yeah.
And to me, if you actually switch the score off, it could have been. I mean, it was an extraordinary production, but it was, it was British period TV, and you added a totally different kind of angle to it. And is that something that drives?
I mean, I love to be able to do that. That's the holy grail for me, is being able to find another sound. And it's not always easy. Obviously it's not always easy, but maybe you're working within a project whose ambitions aren't that, they don't have the space for that.
Bums on
sound.
seats. Bums on sofas,
they don't want, and they're not playing, I feel to bring a really fresh element to a production, all the other elements in the production need to be working towards that, to be the same. They all want to be trying to do something different, in some way, or bring something fresh, or elevate themselves to a degree. If you're a lone composer, you can come up with the freshest score in the world. Either it won't get through, or no one will notice it if the production isn't up to it. If what you're working to hasn't got the same ambitions, the lofty ambitions you're talking about.
Do you not feel, do you ever kind of do that and go, do you know what you've got here, we could really push it? Or do you...
Sometimes I'm not necessarily, I do fight for something if I really believe it, but quite often I won't necessarily know myself. It needs to be embraced in the way it's edited into, the way they edit to it. It needs to be embraced in the way they mix the sound to it. It needs to be embraced in the way that it's used lots of different times, and really featured. If that's not embraced, it doesn't matter how good how strong your piece of music is. No, it's not really going to be heard. So everyone needs to have the same conviction.
Right,
That's kind of what I'm saying in a rather roundabout way.
No, not at all. No, it's fascinating. And a lot of your music has a not only really magnificent. I'm not being sycophantic.
Please.
I'm a big fan of Martin.
Come here every day. That's great.
Not only has kind of magnificent compositions, but will have a strong concept.
Yeah.
I think that sounds like
no. That's totally because it has to have an idea. For me, it has to have an idea behind it.
An identity, I guess. A world.
An identity, and I would say that is partly borne down the fact that I am somewhat limited musically. My piano playing is atrocious, like embarrassingly awful. You know, that's.
What is your background? Did you?
Well, I have a very musical background, and my godfather was Benjamin Britten. My parents were his agents. Yeah. So I grew up in totally in that world, in a very classical world, which I then moved away from. But it's very much part of me. I couldn't get away from that.
Right.
So
did you go to college?
I didn't go to music college.
Right.
So I never studied music. I'd had piano lessons for my life, but I have a terrible ear. I couldn't tell you whether what pitch it was in, if it's changed key or not, or anything like that. And I will use this little story to show that when Hans sat where you're sitting, and we were working on something together, and I went over and played it on the piano. He just, I could see him just sort of nodding and going, "My God, you are such a bad piano player. Yeah, you are even worse than me." Yeah.
That's
fascinating. That was first badge of honour, I guess. So therefore, I'm pretty restricted about what I can do. I'm never going to dazzle anyone with any great harmony or any sort of a complex development, so I have to rely on an idea or a concept a bit more, and the sound is really important. Therefore, I would never, you know, I know I can't just sit down with an orchestral template and write something necessarily, so probably that's going to be remotely original, because if I just restrict it to that, I won't produce anything that I think is worthy of anything new. So I think that's why I'll get to that stage of having to rely on that if I'm going to try something a little different.
So the concept can lead and inspires the composition in the sense of a set of sounds.
Totally, and I'll have to have that before I start. You know, it is listening to other people's stuff, of course, but you know, I was in Amsterdam over the weekend, and I escaped my lovely family for an hour just to go down to the local church, which I saw had a little concert on, and it was a little local vocal group and playing some Hildegard von Bingen.
Right.
And it was amazing. Just one of those absolutely gorgeous moments. They had a little separate arrangement. It was percussion, a couple of wind players, a violin, and accordion player. And they just sort of noodled around over this bed for a while in this lovely church. And then off stage, the whole chorus started singing this little riff and repeated over and over again. And then they came on all singing it. And it was just one of those great moments. And it was like, fantastic. You know, that's Princess Diana's theme nailed right there. Of course, when you get it back, you come back home, it's like a tune from the 13th century isn't necessarily going to work,
yes.
but it's.
I would say you don't.
It's about that idea, you know. It's about that stimulation and that connection, and like that could emotionally somehow, in some weird way, connect with the world's view of this princess, this kind of idea that they had about a character in history,
right? And
somehow that kind of classic worldly piece of music could inform our way we look at this character.
As a consequence, is your workflow very much different for every job, or does there tend to be a recognisable process for you?
I'm sure I repeat myself in my flow a lot, but I always start with a totally blank page, and I never have a template and it's always about listening to stuff first,
right,
before I dive in. It's been a little different on The Crown, on the season 3 that I've just finished, because and it's what I'm starting to do on season 4, is I'm writing lots not to picture at all, and just to the brief of the main guy, Peter Morgan, who writes the whole show, and that has been really great. Actually, that's been really, really good, because you're really not remote. You're not even slightly constricted by any scene, or even I'm not even trying to write it to the script, or got vague ideas about characters and where they're going, but nothing more than that. It's just somehow an emotional connection that I'm trying to get, a response from the music, or a feeling, or a atmosphere from it. So
right. So that's you're just writing totally away from, and then you just lay stuff up, and then the process of. And
then I'll write him 10 little ideas, send them off, and he'll rubbish most of them, and 3 he'll pick out and go, run with those. And then I give them to the editors, and they're editing almost exclusively to them.
I hate it when they temp with my own music from old things.
Do you? Okay.
I really don't like it at all.
At least it's a vote of confidence. You know, I'm still a sucker for that vote of like, oh yes, we do actually like your music, rather than we've employed you and yet we'd much rather this piece of display. It's really mediocre.
Yes, I think you're right. I think there's I can totally agree.
it's half a dozen and 1/6 the other, because I'd much rather them have Temp Love with something that I've written than
Right,
Temp Love with a piece of
exactly.
Thomas Newman, which is, you know,
Which
carries
is
it.
obviously- Which is, yes.
I mean,
it's actually surprisingly hard ripping yourself off.
yes,
In a convincing way, because you've done it and you've said it
yes.
in that one piece. So to then make that piece better is actually quite hard, because you can't come at it a different way, I found.
No, absolutely. And do you therefore think that getting on board as early as possible has a massive advantage?
Yeah.
And it's difficult, isn't it?
It's difficult, absolutely. And, you know, obviously you don't get to decide that. And if it's a project that you really want to do, you'll get on board whenever the opportunity arises. But
Yeah.
But that's why I've sort of given over myself to the state, the Crown, just because that opportunity has come up, that I can do this, and they're totally into that. In fact, that's almost like when I started on season 3, Peter Morgan was ringing me up within a week of me saying I was available and saying, like, what's the new sound then? You know, they had literally started, they were a couple of weeks into filming, and it was
Wow.
like, and I was just like, what do you mean? I have no idea. You know, and he was like, no, just write me stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so, and that was, yeah, okay, this will be good. It was pretty painful to start off with, but this will be good.
And do you feel that developing these relationships offers a rare opportunity as well?
Relationships is, I mean, if you have a good relationship with someone, that's worth a lot, and feeling you're in it together, that you're pulling in the same direction, all of that, that's to be really treasured.
Absolutely.
And as you get on in your career, you realise that you treasure those more and more, and you will, you know, happily go back and stay faithful to those people, because
absolutely,
whatever, you know, pretty much whatever they're doing, really.
It's this just having that kind of trust in each other, I think, is just...
Yeah.
It's that thing of not having, for me, I have a relationship with some people at the moment, and it's they're very specific with the revisions they request. They always make it better, but they never ask to listen to the revisions, because the timescale we work on is minuscule. They'll sometimes ring me up from the dub in a total panic because I'm not doing it right. Yeah. But it's just like they kind of know 9 times out of 10, if I tacit that bit, I will tacit it.
Yeah. They don't. Yes, they certainly don't check what you do.
Something I hate about being in non-relationships on jobs is I always say you can always spot the composer at rap parties, because they're always standing
no
alone.
friends.
Yeah, exactly. But with this,
mates.
you feel very much part of the crew.
Yeah, I do. In a way, I genuinely do feel part of something. In still don't have any mates at the rap party, but it's like, no, it's. I certainly feel more part of it than I have anything else. I even have a lanyard up there to go into the cutting room whenever I want. Amazing. I can just kind of pop in, you know. I've never had that before, so
absolutely
something to hang around my neck makes me feel important.
I hear a lot of live musicians on the stuff that you do. Is that something that you enjoy, those kind of collaborations? Yeah.
Season 3 on The Crown, we have a decent budget, which is fantastic, and so I could record at air, I could do really a pretty decent band size, you know, ensemble, whatever I want. And we did a huge amount of time recording redoing those demos that I'd originally done, and Peter Morgan, the main Crown guy, chucked out at least a third of all the orchestral recordings.
Oh wow!
Made me go back to the raw demos often.
Okay.
So no live stuff at all, pretty much. Maybe the odd single player that I've just got in here.
Right.
So really, you know, that's an eye-opener in terms of what I think makes something sound really good and elevates it to a higher class level doesn't translate for other people at all. You know, and I'll always go, oh, it's just a demo, it's just the samples, and it's like, no, the trouble is, you know, they're your samples, and you try redoing them in a, you know, when I'm only playing 3 chords, you play 3 chords.
I know what you mean. It's not. They're not interested in stuff necessarily sounding real. I remember having a real eye opener doing a like teen rom-com, and I used this guitar thing, and I said, "No, we'll get this great guitarist, get Leo Abrahams in." And he said, "You know, it all sounds like guitar," and I went, "Well, yeah, because that was a guitar sample." He went, "I don't care. I just want it to sound like that keyboardy soundy thing that happens to be made from guitar." Yeah. You don't want the presence in the room that a live player necessarily brings. Yeah. And I think especially a series like that, they want a grandness and distance in the music in some way. So actually,
quite often live players, even if you've got a lot of them, will make it sound more chamber. They'll make
Yes.
it sound more present and immediate, and that isn't necessarily, you know, it's, as you say, they don't care whether it's live or not, you know, whether money's been spent or not. So, yeah, I might save a bit this series, I think.
Now, I've always been somewhat, as a close follower of your work, somewhat envious of the dubs that the dubs
okay.
always seem to be remarkably generous. Whereas, I mean, I was working on stuff like Poirot, and it's like, just hello. But I was having a discussion about this behind your back in a pub, and there was someone who had mixed one of your soundtracks, and he said it's because of your obsession with dialogue. Obsession was maybe not the word he used, but he said that your attention to dialogue. And is that something that you, in order to get it heard, is it something that you're? I mean, that maybe not the motivation, but
no, sure. Well, I'm definitely a pragmatist in terms of, I know that if you pull a very loud piece of music down, if it's blaring away underneath dialogue, then if it's not making any space for the dialogue, then it's going to get whacked and sat on. Sometimes I think I do it too much. I mean, some of the dubbing mixes have been like, you've literally mixed this music already. You know, I would almost expect them just to put my music at a level that is decent and not touch it. They could pretty much do that, as far as I'm concerned. That's what and it's like, why have you changed the level of my music in that section? I'd already done that for you. You know, we'd already accommodated that space.
If we go back a step, what I find certainly in this country is that the time they have to dub things is just ridiculous. I mean, I mean, I don't know. I mean, this is probably a bigger budget, but a lot of the British TV, even stuff like Poirot, it's a blistering pace.
Yeah.
And if they feel at points that the music's too loud, they will find a nominal level that accommodates it all, rather than they're not going to sit there and ride it for an hour and a half's worth of telly.
Sure. Well, that's the point. It's like, you know, save yourself some time. Concentrate on other things. Leave my music where it is, or at least try it out that way. You know, then I think if they I always say, just try leaving it where it is, and if you don't like it, change it. But don't start off with like, oh, well, let's fade in every cue. Or let's fade out every cue. It's like, no, it's okay. We've done that already. So
is this a separate process for you, or is this from the beginning of when you start laying stuff
when I'm writing to picture? Yeah, when I'm writing to picture. But I've sort of been forced, in a way, not to do that as much on this, because I've written so much early on, which they then edited to, and often I would change it, and again, Peter Morgan would just go, no, I like the way the original wasn't necessarily working to the picture. Yeah, weaved. Did it sort of consciously. You know, it just ploughed its own path, the track, and I think he quite liked that. Although he never sort of identified that, but that's what I took away from it. That it was something. Almost I was being too polite by making way for stuff.
Right.
And actually, so I've sort of learned to maybe not do that. You know, maybe treat things like a track more and more. So
it's something that you concentrate on whilst writing, but all the way through. Basically, dialogue's always on whilst you're writing?
Yes. At the final stages, absolutely, yeah. When I'm mixing something, I would actually make sure it worked with the dialogue before I delivered it to a dub. Yeah. I wouldn't mix without dialogue. All I'm trying to strive for, and I'm trying to strive for it in what we're doing at the moment with The Crown, and I've sort of succeeded a bit on season 3, and I really hope to take this forward, is use the music more like tracks, in that it has and less like underscore, which I'm sure is every composer's dream, really.
Yes.
Because when it arrives, and you know about it, and then it's gone, and that's it. And you don't have it trickling away under anything. There's no trickling going on. There's no sort of just general kind of like murmuring away underneath that it's either there or it isn't. And hopefully that's the beauty of working on something that's confident in itself, that it doesn't need help most of the time to tell us to do what it's doing. There's very few times I'm kind of going, okay, this scene isn't really working, we need to just help it along.
Yes.
We can say, okay, this scene is working, now what do we add to it? You know, what am I going to say on top of this? Or this montage, it's very obvious what this montage is about. So we say, let's not just say that again, let's say something else. And that's what fascinates me about the whole way of writing to picture, is then you get into a whole complex bit of relationship of the viewer, of what they know about music and what music means to them, looking at this, say a montage, to take for instance a sequence of events not in a strict timeline. So we're removed, we're looking at this scene, and we are kind of third party, and the music can allow us to be that. Yes. And allow us to look at this and make our own judgments and reach conclusions. But it's no longer just supporting what's going on in that little scene there. And I think that's it's not revolutionary, but it's modern. It's the way of good, successful modern scoring.
And so often it's what I hate with scores is when they're asking you to. It's almost like audio description of what's going on the screen. I think that the best score is when you're narrator, but when you're not adding a voiceover. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're like a Greek chorus, really.
Yes, exactly. The Greek chorus is a lovely idea because it's a step back. Anything that allows us to step back and look at the action in a different way is very successful for me. I really enjoy that.
Absolutely. And what is their role in helping to tell the story? I guess the chorus, that is.
Yeah. So talking about that vocal piece. Earlier on, you mentioned of mine. That comes into a whole kind of. Is it period music? Is it not period music? Is it? I'm season 4. I'm just starting. Is in the 80s. I'd love to use bits of synth sound that kind of connect with that in some way and resonate with people about what they think of that period. But it's not period music. Or all of those. You open up a whole interesting world if you're not just buried in the scene, kind of murmuring along with some tense beds. Or kind of disturbing drones.
And do you like take time off between work as a kind of a?
Well, I do normally. Normally, I would sort of be. I used to work. I would maybe do more than one thing at a time, but not that much. But I would, and then I would work 7 days a week, and then I would take a few months off. It's all right, but it's not healthy. It takes you at least a few weeks to get back to reconnect with your family and be part of their world, and also you get over you have this adrenaline rush when you're trying to really push for something, when you're really up against it, which is great and nice drug in its own right. Yeah. But like anything like that, it finishes and you come down. So liking the idea that I'm in a little more of an even. It's just I'm working hard, but I'm not massively hyped up or pumped up about about what I'm doing. I'm just spending time to step back a little bit and look at it. So that's really nice.
It should be a job for life, and therefore it's about being sustainable. And I think when you're younger, take a lot of work and
of course.
But I think it is about finding your own. They call it cadence, don't they, in cycling? Finding your kind of meter of work.
Yeah. Your pace.
Yes.
Your pace that is sustainable. I did look at moving out to LA a few years back, and I mean, family kind of concerns aside about what that would have meant, and just that idea of working at that pace and that ferocity and that intensity in that small world.
You went out and did something out there, didn't you?
No, I've never actually worked out there.
Okay.
No. I've worked on productions that were out there, but no, I've never actually had that. And I can see, I'm not saying I would say no if it's something really lovely came along, but it's certainly the idea of actually committing and moving out there, which is what you needed to do, I think, to really make it to another level in the film industry anyway.
Yeah. I mean, I was lucky. I went and did a job for 6 weeks out there and just went, oh, right, it's just not for me.
Yeah.
And I think that's something I would recommend to people is go out there and check it out because it's not for everyone.
No, it's definitely not. And and we live in London. I mean, it's fine. Amsterdam's a good city. I go live there, but London's pretty good too, and LA is something different. Just their town planning alone, Jesus.
Yeah, you go there and I suddenly went, I am a European because I like to drink coffee outside and watch people walk past.
Yeah.
And
I like to walk places.
I like to walk places, and I like an old bridge and a church. I do miss those things.
Yeah. Just waiting for lifts. That just drove me nuts. It's like, why are we all standing around waiting for this lift? And then I'll try and use the stairs and set off some alarm or something because no one's used the stairs.
Is there anything that you feel a box you'd still like to tick, whether it be that big Marvel film or an opera, or?
I've certainly got no desires to write an opera.
Nice.
I know how hard that is, and I totally respect the people who do that. And
yeah.
Though actually, I think in the end, watching a Benjamin Britten opera, that maybe just because it's in me a bit, it's family a bit, but that is, I love that. You know, that will do it for me. That's the highest art form, I think, possibly. In certain, there's only a very few of them, but if you get the posh seats and you sit right in front of it, and you've got a chorus of 50 singing straight at you, and the music is just stuff I could never even begin to write, then that's great, and a whole good production on top. So no, I'm not going to attempt to do that. I would, and I also don't have a desire to write music on its own. I don't want that to look like I've got no ambition or faith in my music, but it's just that it's a different mindset, and what I'm most interested in is the emotional connection of the story that I'm writing for. What I'd love it is if I can write a score and you can then listen to the score on its own and it stands up on its own. That would be that's my ambition overall. Right. So that at the end I could put together a little 10 tracks of it and go, yeah, this is listenable to. I would actually listen to this.
Yeah.
And that feels like I've kind of done a reasonable job then. But actually writing just in a vacuum of just some vague concept in my mind, and I don't, yeah. Again, I'll leave that to people who are really good at that.
It's like that's not the muscles you've exercised.
Well, it's not, definitely. Yeah, I mean, it is that, but it's also, it's not like it's bursting out of me in this kind of, I've just got to splurge it out and come out. I found it pretty painful writing music.
Really?
And hard work, yeah.
Does procrastination creep into your life?
Yeah, yes, but that's a good thing. That's the other good thing about working to pictures. You do have a schedule, and that procrastination is limited for that. And fear is a great enabler just to get going and just do it. Just stop thinking about it and do it.
Yeah.
And that's good. I like that too, because yes, otherwise I'd just be sitting there going, I could make any one of many choices right now, and where do I go? What do I do? There's lots. So I'm very happy to have a little cage to operate within. That's great. I know that, but it sounds unambitious. It sounds like I've got sort of, that sounds...
No, not at all. I mean, I think what's very interesting to come and talk to you is when I first met you, we had the same agent. I'm not with them anymore. And it was a Christmas party, and I was... In those days, it was like TV, and then you moved on to films, and that was quite a difficult move. Now, in the last 10 years, that has changed massively. Yeah. Has that also changed your ambitions?
Yeah. And I came up through TV, and I spent those 10 years until fairly recently desperately trying to get away from being considered a TV composer, because somehow TV was a dirty word.
Yeah.
And now it's not anymore at all.
The opposite.
In fact, it's pretty much stolen that mid-budget film, intelligent, well-made film, ambitious range, and film has been left sort of with its middle stripped out, and it's now low budget and superhero kind of, with a few exceptions, but really quite a few, I think, these days. And it's so nice to work on something that's in the public consciousness. I think that's always been not from a vanity, I hope not from a vanity point of view, but just because you're engaging with people about something, and there's nothing like being able to say, oh, you saw that, did you see that? Wasn't that fucking great? Did you hear that music for that?
And hearing people talking about it.
Yeah, exactly. That's lovely. That's really, really nice. And so, and I think, something like The Crown is you could get more. That's why I've got no ambition to be beyond where I am now in that sense.
Right.
Because it's so lodged in people's consciousness.
I heard Sam Mendes doing an interview a couple of years ago saying that there's just no way American Beauty would be made in this day and age. And that was a very interesting zone for composers. Well, I think Thomas Newman did very well out of that.
You do feel like Thomas Newman could pop up doing a TV thing, could take a job away from you, which also has its downside. So there's a bit more competition now.
And something that I have noticed just from observing social media and stuff is that you are very much a supporter and promoter of new up-and-coming talent.
Right, yes.
I guess you get approached, you listen to people's music. Is there a key piece of advice that you would offer up?
I think you have to try and grab people's attention. When people send me reels, if they send me a bunch of tracks that kind of covers all bases, immediately I switch off. If I hear one track and then hear another track that's sort of comedy, and one track that's then sort of generic thriller, and then I wouldn't get to track number 3. So it's just you need to be trying to say something.
Yeah.
You need to be trying to show that you want to say something.
Yeah.
Or even if you're doing the same thing over and over again, and trying to get a little bit better at each time. But I don't think you won't catch my ear, and you wouldn't. I don't think you'll find it hard to catch anyone else's ear, in terms of directors, or they've got to really. It's got to leap out, because a lot of other noise to punch through.
Absolutely. I mean, if you're not getting past track 3, can you imagine directors and producers, particularly with this orchestral stuff? It's like to an untrained ear, it just after the second or third track, let alone second or third show reel, it just melds into one.
No, quite. And the trouble is, they've all got your brilliant samples now, and so they can do a very nice piece of string music, but somehow you've got to say, you've got to draw attention to it. So you go, listen to this bit of string music, listen to and it's usually just about less is more, isn't it? I mean, it's just about being restrained, which luckily is I can only play 3 chords. It's not a problem with me.
They're just 3 excellent chords.
Yeah, 3 and whatever.
Find 3 excellent chords.
That's it. I mean, the basic piece of advice is just stick as close to the people making films as possible, and build those relationships. Don't worry about hanging out with musicians, or on a purely mercenary level, they're not going to give you a job. My first job was working at a post-production place, just an audio place, just being around studios and understanding them and feeling confident with that, because I'd never really had any technology, so that just got over that sort of techno fear. And then just being close to those people. And luckily, I feel really comfortable with I feel more comfortable with directors and producers than I probably do with musicians, just because I feel I can talk a language to them and I understand what they're doing and what they're saying. But if they like you, it doesn't really matter if they like your music or not. They'll probably give you a job. Yeah. And that's so trying to build those relationships is really important. Yeah.
I think empathy is a very important thing for us. I think it's so easy with us sitting in seclusion to feel very victimised by the process, but I think to actually be, as you say, close to directors and go, you probably had a really, you're really under a lot of pressure, probably more so than I am. Yeah.
You have to understand how they're seeing you, and how they're seeing the process, and obviously we feel the music is incredibly important. And it's funny that I honestly used to sort of have a feeling that somehow in my mind, I never verbalised it in my head, but I felt that I was way more important than I was in terms of the process. So you have to see your process in the chain, and then, just as you point out, all the pressures that they're under, and as the higher up you go, the pressures are insane. Yeah. I'm looking at these directors on The Crown, and they're having to sort of fit into a world that's already there, but produce an amazing, but still amazingly high quality piece of work, and I have a huge amount of respect and sympathy for them.
Brilliant stuff, Martin. Well, listen, thank you. This has been an absolute pleasure. Thanks so much for your time.
It's lovely to see you.
Good luck with the next season.
Can I interview you now? Can we do?
Brilliant stuff. Cheers.
Right.
Fantastic. Quite interesting.
Very interesting.
Not what I expected at all. And particularly that thing he said about, Hans Zimmer, who's the most respectful person about people's abilities, him going, no, you're just not very good at the piano. It really surprised me.
But Benjamin Britten's godson, royalty in the composition world in the UK.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely amazing. Well, thanks for staying with us today. Every day is going to be some fun stuff on the social the Spitfire social channels. Sorry we lost you a little bit on Instagram. We'll try and make that happen tomorrow, but do come back tomorrow at 1700 hours GMT for the fully sealed tombola, and we're just selecting who's going to. I'm going to be the assistant to someone who's going to run the show here, so we're kind of slacking various people in the office to see who will do that. So deals to be had?
Yes, so just a reminder then. So 25% off individual libraries, up to 73% off collections. And again, remember that if you have some of the elements of the collections, all you need to do is put the collection in your basket and just go, once you're logged in, go to the kind of checkout area and you'll see what your upgrade price is. So it's very simple to complete your collections. And remember, the ton is our kind of super special. It's got British Drama Toolkit, which is just absolutely great. Really love that. eDNA Earth, again, using a kind of our, organic sounds to create this amazing kind of synth thing. And then orchestral grand piano, contextual grand piano, really, really useful it's very system light, but it sounds great in the context of orchestral tracks kind of in the back there. And because it's the ton, for those not familiar with the kind of vernacular of the East End, that is £100, dollars, euros.
But not yen.
But not yen.
So, Paul, have you bought anything? Are you looking at any sites?
Yeah, I mean, one of my favourite plug-in manufacturers is Sound Toys. They've got a great deal on at the moment, and I've been topping up my Sound Toys stuff. I had quite a lot of their stuff anyway because it's so good. But Echo Boy, there's so much good stuff. So check out Sound Toys. That's what I would recommend. What have you been looking at?
Bunker Samples.
Yep.
I don't know if his approach to recording strings and stuff is absolutely fascinating. And in fact, has a very similar thing. He's got this density slider on Bunker Strings Volume 1, which changes the size of the band. I don't think his or Bunker Samples Black Friday deal is live yet, but I think it may be tomorrow. And I believe, Josh, something new.
Something new?
But well worth checking out Bunker Samples. So, great. Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Oh, yes.
Of course. Our American friends, happy Thanksgiving. Hope you're all preparing your turkey for later, and we hope you have a fantastic evening.
Brilliant. Happy Thanksgiving, and see you tomorrow.